It's SPOKEies University from DS Simon Media, featuring Shonali Burke from Shonali Burke Consulting.
Shonali, let's jump right into it. When it comes to recognizing spokespeople, why is it important to recognize trust, authenticity, and effectiveness?
You know, these days, I think it is so easy for anyone to think they're a spokesperson because of how ubiquitous the internet is. Literally anybody can broadcast themselves, that people forget that good spokespeople really represent the brand. And so when you have a great spokesperson who is able to distill your story and communicate it to your audience and to your prospects in a way that it becomes their story, that's really priceless.
What are some of the best practices, not only that you tell people that you work with, but also just from when you look at the marketplace, who's doing it right, who's doing it wrong? Why do some of these people end up doing it better than others?
Well, I think we probably can all point to a group of people who are doing it wrong, so I'm not going there. But I think what is really important for organizations and their spokespeople to remember is that, number one, you have to know the story. You have to know the truth. It's very irresponsible for brands to send spokespeople out who are not completely informed of what is going on, because what the public hears is going to be what the spokesperson says. And it puts the spokesperson in a very, very awkward position if what they're saying is incomplete or, not the entire picture. And that is something we have to try really, really hard to avoid. Now, sometimes it is not intentional. Companies, especially CEOs, are busy. EDs of nonprofits are busy. There's so much going on. Sometimes they just don't think about it, which is why a messaging exercise beforehand is so important, so that you really understand, what is a story we're trying to tell? What are the messages that we need to communicate? What are all the nuances and details? Even if you don't end up communicating them, it's important to know what they are.
So you touched on some of the mistakes to avoid, but when you really drill down into it, are there some tried and true mistakes that you want people to avoid? I know we don't want to go into the negative, but sometimes people understand what not to do better than what to do. So any tips for avoiding mistakes for spokespeople? Don't
lie. That would be number one. And that, I think, is across the board in corporate communications. You do not lie. If you don't know the answer, say you don't know, but you're going to find out and get back to them. And it really helps if you also give a specific time frame. I'm going to bring up the example of United, which we all know has had some really tough times recently. And their messaging initially was so all over the place. We were all going, and I know you guys were going as well. Oh my God, what are they doing? You just wanted to shake them. But I do give them credit for getting their act together, and they got it together pretty quickly. And as a United customer myself, I did receive follow-up communications, nothing to do with PR or corp comm or anything like that, that said very specifically what action they were going to take, what they were going to be looking at, and what time frame we could expect to hear a report back. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what I think companies really need to remember.
So why do you think that companies only get their act together after something has gone on? And in most cases, they've not been painted in a good light. Do you think even the best of crisis communications training, let's call it, and prep kind of falls by the wayside? So few entities, corporations, companies, anything, they really don't get it right. We very rarely can point to someone who gets it right off the bat. Why do you think that's the case?
You hit the nail on the head. They have so much going on that they don't pay attention to planning. They don't take the time to prep. And as many of my colleagues and peers and people that I've learned from and crisis gurus today will tell you, the best case scenario is that you do all of this prep work and you never have to put it in place. But heaven help you if that time comes where, the worst possible event happens, or one of the worst possible scenarios happens, and you haven't practiced and you have no clue what to do. So they really need to take a step back. I think everyone is so caught up in the fast-paced digital world that they don't have the time. And when are we going to practice? And when are we going to do all this? And blah, blah, blah. If you don't have the time to do it now, what are you going to do when the crisis actually does occur? So better practice, be prepared. Better you never have to use those plans than have a crisis occur and not know what to do.
Those are the people that are not going to be nominated for a Spokee Award this year. Shonali, thanks for joining us on SPOKEies University.
Thank you so much for having me.